I know we
Recording
had-
in progress.
Good morning.
John, I think needs to leave at 10 and Doug needs to leave at 10:30. We were done all before that. 10:30. And today is, everybody got information from Kim, on what we were going to discuss, the line protection law. And we discussed that at quite some length and, it's open for comments. I'd like to see it to be able to move out of today's meeting onto the other boards and also for the town board, so a public hearing can be established for it. So I'll open the meeting up and let anybody that wants to address the questions they still have on the view sheds and the ridge line to discuss them.
I guess first and foremost, this draft applies to the Canandaigua Lake view shed. So this would be just the lake.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
I think it was, what I thought was, unless I misread it, is that, it would be a lot involved if we did the whole town at this time.
Oh, yeah,
At
I
least
think
do
we
the lake
agreed on
shore
that.
Or lake place, and then as we move forward, we can always bring it back, and add to it if we decide to do that.
Mhm. Want to make that clear, that's all.
Okay.
I have been having a lot of angst about this in general. And I want to try a different approach and see how it sits with everyone. Because I'm not sure this approach that we're talking about now is the right approach. I think it stymies, in my opinion, the type of development that we want here in Canandaigua. And I want to be clear about the type of development that I think we need here in Canandaigua. And this view shed, I don't believe we want or need high density development. I don't think we ought to have any development like the Morale properties. And I don't mean to name them in particular and specifically, but I don't think we need any more of that in the view shed. I don't think we need any more of the properties like the development that is right here behind the town building. I think what we need is more high-end to median high-end, single-family homes that are higher-end developments, higher-end properties, where we're going to have people that come to live here that are entrepreneurial, that are live, work, and play here. And we control our density in that way. Density is controlled by economics. Purely and simply, it is the clearest form of basic economics there is, and that's development. It's all based on economics, and it's all based on density. So if we allow developers to build densely on properties in this view shed because it's economically feasible, that's what they're going to do. And that's been illustrated by some of the developments that are being proposed, as well as some of the developments that already exist. I want to go back to a statement that Tom made at our last meeting, and he used the example of Napa Valley. And during that example, he mentioned Napa Valley as having $867,000 median price homes. And he also mentioned that the median age of a buyer of a home was 38 years old. I say, what's wrong with that? Why don't we model ourselves after that? And why don't we attempt to create that type of development and be the Tahoe of the East, as opposed to limiting the ability to build and develop nice homes in this geographic area, because that's what this code as written is going to do. And I can go through it and I'll pick out specifics in it when we get to the point of going through it. But I think we ought to work on and consider limiting density based on acreage. In my opinion, as opposed to limiting it based on obscure restrictions, for lack of a better way, lack of a better term. I think having 38-year-olds as the median income buyer and having $867,000 homes, in my opinion, are demographics we want here in Canandaigua. And I say take the dense developments and keep them in areas where we want dense development. And that area there is not where we want the dense development. I'll just leave it at there. I have a hell of a lot more points, but I don't want to take up the whole hour and a half talking about it.
I could add on or segue on John. John, I don't think I agree that we've got to have a mix of housing. Otherwise, we're going to turn into a place like Hilton Head, if you've ever been there. It's an ultimate planned community, but anybody that works there gets bussed in from Beaufort, or I'm trying to think of the municipalities that are around there, because the people that mow the lawns, that wait on you, that the service people can't afford to live there, including the cops and the teachers and so on. So I don't know whether we want to be that exclusive a community, but when I'm looking at this and I think of you and Terry, are we getting into an over regulation? We've got guidelines and we've got sensible people on boards that can make decisions with guidelines without getting into, geez, when I look at this visual impact questionnaire, for instance, and we can get into, I mean, we're creating terrific roadblocks to hopefully reasonable development. And we seem to get along okay with guidelines. Do we need to quantify everything to the nth degree? I mean, when we get into regulating the color of homes, drive down John's neighborhood. I will guarantee you that at least a third of the homes that are clearly visible from the lake are white or a light color. Are we going to tell people they can't have a white house? What the hell was his name? Eric Blazak.
Isaac.
The last thing I said to Eric, I can't tell you, you can't have a white house, but
can't
don't
make
paint your house white. The goddamn house is white and it's got a nice shiny metal roof. And we're gonna tell people you can't do that. I just think we're getting into over regulating. We can do it with smart people on our planning or zoning boards, deciding how much screening or how tall or which is a hillside and which is a ridge line. I just think we're getting into too much over regulation because we believe in some kind of utopia that is long gone. All the primo ridge lines have long been built on. I think we need places like where you live, but this is, I mean, this is suburbia. We've created suburbia and hopefully an appropriate place where used to be grazing land. It's not really farmland, it's grazing land. It's not, to my way of thinking, prime farmland. It's probably an appropriate place where we have development and they're $300,000 or $400,000 homes.
Which is good.
There's starter houses,
Sure.
unfortunately, these days. And I think whoever mapped out the SCR way back, that's probably an appropriate growth node, as is hopefully the uptown area. And maybe for a more affordable housing for the firemen, the teachers, the waitresses, and so on. But when I go through this thing, I said, Jesus, do we want to saddle Chuck or the zoning board with regulating things to the nth degree. And for instance, I'm gonna go back to this.
Tom, before you get into the specifics, I just want to respond to what you're saying, just very briefly. I think we're on the same page and I agree with what you're saying.
I'm not
think
disagreeing. with
I
you.
think we need to have places where service workers can live and play and support the community also. But I think we need to delegate or zone
That's what zoning is about.
where that
Yeah.
type of development should be, and as opposed to putting that type of development in that purple area right there. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to give you that
That's
feedback.
okay, I'm just getting warmed up.
I know, that's why I wanted to
This
just get
visual
that in there quick.
impact assessment questionnaire. Will the project complement or contrast with the visual character desired by the community? Who the hell is the community? And are we going to be, whatever project you put up, including the Morel project, there are people gonna whine and complain, and what are you doing to my neighborhood? And we're seeing this over on East Lake Road, all these NIMBYs. How many people signed that petition that don't even live in Canandaigua, New York?
Probably half of them.
We're gonna zone by whatever the desire of the NIMBYs are who don't want it in their backyard. We can't decide things like that. You're gonna have every NIMBY in the world show up whenever you've got a project that they don't want.
I have to ask, what's an
And-
NIMBY? What's an NIMBY?
Let me jump in.
What's a NIMBY?
Yeah,
Not in my backyard.
oh, okay, thank
Let
you.
me jump in. I think this is good. We're talking this out. I don't think right now we have a shared vision of where we're going with our future. And without that, it's really funny because you can reference the community. It's kind of like when I get into a thing with so many buddies and they get biblical, but they don't really know what the Bible says. You know, we all have this idea and of where Canandaigua was going, but it's not a shared vision. And we've got to be careful with that. If we go to McMansions and all that, one of the things that happens is you have an eminent domain situation where people are priced out that live around the lake that may have had family properties forever because taxes will rise up. And if you're willing to accept that, knowing that that's going to happen, then that's a decision being made. I had some questions about, colors and stuff like that, not knowing. I think though, we need to push forward and come up with something, but I think we need to go back with a gut check. What is our shared vision? Now, Middle Cheshire, are we a suburban road or not? And the answer is all of the above. Part of it we are. And do we want to continue with that? I think that John's point about high density, I think that's something that's meaningful. It's going to affect traffic. It's going to affect everything. And I think we really need to take a look at what is our future. The other thing that I said last week is based on the interest in people coming in and grabbing the open land and developing or whatever. We're having a mini gold rush right now. Canandaigua is in demand. Once this is allowed to find its course, the gold rush will be over. And we'll be looking back and say, wow, how did that happen or whatever. And there are people in my neck of the woods that can't figure out why they built those condos or whatever, attached homes up on that knob off of that. And whether or not it was a severe issue for the town, for the people who live in that area, that was kind of a stick in the eye, and it didn't go over well. That's all I know from talking to people in my area, and that's only a small little part. I think we need to get back to what is our shared vision. What do we see now? The idea of having elite properties and all that, on some levels that is attractive,
but we need to understand what the impact would be if we.
I think it should be mixed. I don't think it should be just, I'm not saying it should be just that. I'm saying it, but what I am saying, what I don't think we want is high density development and that view shed.
And the one thing that's coming, because everything you do has an impact. The schools are suffering right now with not having growth, unless I'm wrong. And Farmington is to beat the band because we're looking at Ryan Home type, things, and it's great for pumping, up the numbers. If you went to the higher price houses, there's no guarantee of children coming to town. Same thing with the connected things. We're not seeing a lot of school buses going into those areas. Now, if you can accept that, they were going to have a negative growth for the schools, and that doesn't bother them, then that's fine. But if you're looking for balance in the community, you want to also keep that in mind. Am I right on that, Doug? That we're kind of at a plateau. We're going backwards a little bit with.
Yeah, so I mean, traditionally, what they usually say is single family homes, you have more of the family that is looking for, a place to raise the kids, and then the school district, that's why the school district pushes single family residential. I mean, the superintendent himself has said that to me several times. Hey, single family residential would be great to get more kids. There's a place for that. That's not where we're seeing the demand from the marketplace when you're talking about economics. When you talk about the millennial generation, interestingly enough, communities all over the country have designed their communities based on the millennial generation, the up and coming, that'd be the largest generation coming with disposable income. And what they want are low maintenance lifestyles, walkable communities. That's national statistics over and over and over. Well, there's an issue. The baby boomers have more disposable income than the millennials, and they wanted the same lifestyle. So they went around and gobbled it all up. And so you've got two large generations that are competing with one another for that same product, the low maintenance lifestyle, walkable communities, and those sorts of things. So there is that. John, can I ask a question too? And just whenever you get this specific law, I've heard you say a couple of times, we don't want greater density in that area. How do you believe that this law gives greater density in that area?
I don't think it limits it.
But our conservation subdivision that we just did, I feel like limits that.
Okay, but this particular ordinance does not.
Right, this is more just the view.
Matter of fact, I can show you a couple of places in here where this ordinance is contradictory to one another.
Okay.
And we'll get to that when we start talking about the particulars, but I don't think this ordinance in any way limits. If I wanted to put 100 home subdivision in anywhere, this does not restrict that from happening.
Right, this
And
isn't about density.
Yes.
This law is not about density.
Well, it does try to limit the density in some ways, but it doesn't really address that. And if the conservation ordinance does that, great, then we don't need to talk about it anymore. But I'm concerned about that.
Well, you can't, I mean, these things all work in concert with one another. That proposal isn't judged against just one of these, it's the whole compendium of our code that has to be satisfied. What Doug says about conservation subdivision does do that, so this is a piece of it, conservation subdivision is a piece of it. So
But
together,
Wes, what I heard though now, Terry, was that we wanted to create a code or an ordinance. And I'm going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard we wanted to have one place where people looked and that the developers could go and understand what they were allowed to build in certain areas. And this, I think, doesn't do that.
I don't think we'll ever come up with one document that.
No, I meant just for
unless you
that
call it
particular, just for that particular area we were talking about.
The only one I know of that does that is actually the form-based code that we're doing. That is one document, that's one portion of the town, that's uptown, where the developer would look at that and they would be able to figure out what it is that they built. The rest of it, you have to look at the whole chapter of zoning 220. As you guys know, I mean, you see that all the time, especially in the zoning board. And then this would go into chapter 220. This is in that same section, as Terry was saying, with all those other things like the conservation subdivision and everything. I really don't believe that, and I haven't done the analysis myself, maybe I should, but I don't believe Lakewood 9 and 10 could be built today if that conservation subdivision ordinance passes. I don't think that that would be able to be built like the townhomes on the ridge.
I think we as the ordinance committee should know that. I think that's a very important piece of this conversation.
Well, the town board hasn't adopted it yet, but.
No,
if
but
the
even
town
if it,
board- Right.
we should know one way or another whether there is some restrictions to the type of development that can take place in that purple shaded area. Because that appears to me to be the focus of this conversation and this document has narrowed us down to what do we want to see when we're looking at this from the lake? Right? That's what's boiled down to. That's conversation has come down to what do we want to see when we look at that purple area from the lake? And I think we need to understand what it is that we are allowed to see doing that.
I had brought up that I was interested in other views, and if my memory serves me right, we said we're going to do this first from the water, and if this proceeds, then the momentum could end up taking us to other viewpoints and all
Yes.
that stuff. So I think that's how we got to where we are, right now. And I think this is all, reasonable. But Tom, when I was looking at the things, and I know our big slogan or what we live by in the CBA is character of the neighborhood. And now we're addressing character of the community, and we're broadening that a little bit in the draft I read. And that's why I talked about shared vision, because that's an abstract for a lot of people, the character. And
is that the people that show up at the hearing, or
Exactly.
is it the 90% of the people that don't give a damn or are perfectly happy with it?
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Until it comes next.
right.
Right.
So I think and the other part that we had talked about was somebody brought up, could we have a moratorium on development while we work this out? And we said here, it said if something was in the pipeline, or at least I had it in my notes, it's already in the pipeline, the paperwork's been filled out. Now, just in casual chat with Chris Nadler, he said that we could freeze something that's in the pipeline. That was his opinion, whether or not that's holds or not. But I'm feeling a little pressure, wondering what's in the pipeline, and wondering if we have to move super fast to get something done, which was fine with me. At least I feel like we need a momentum. I don't know, who's setting the speed limit here, but I want to get something done. And I had said to John, I'm willing to come for more sessions if need be to turn the corner on this. I understand that whatever we come up with may have to be amended at a later time, because it is what it is. But could you respond to that, Doug, about
Sean,
stuff
feel
that's
free
in the
to
pipeline?
jump in here, but I mean, the greatest, and I've been saying this, I know you guys are tired of me saying this, but I feel like the greatest pressure and demand is actually uptown. And that's why we've been pushing so hard to get the form-based code and everything in place. But that's also where we want the density, right?
Yeah.
That's where we've said that is the spot. And I mean, I know we've got any number of different proposals, and I'm talking to developers myself. But most of the conversations I've had, I'll tell you, over the last 6 months revolve around uptown. It probably 90+% of the conversations revolve around uptown.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where its growth is planned. And
Right.
again, in the SCR, growth was planned. Perhaps it's not so much so now, but we can see what happens to Cook's property. Do we have any idea? Is that going to be another housing development?
Well, so I think what the gentleman that purchased it was Jeremy Fields, everybody. I think it was table knows Jeremy Fields. Jeremy purchased it, and what he said is, generally speaking, he wants to do this in phases. He wants to start with a country club and golf course, whether it's 9 or 18. I've heard different things from him out of his mouth himself, like weddings, holding weddings and that type of thing. And then what he has said is that if he can, he would like to be able to put houses also on the property, possibly the property that goes down towards the landings. And I know that he's trying to acquire additional land so that he could maybe connect to the landings, but
Who bought the farm across the street? Do you know?
that's the farm across the street is a gentleman that is just, it's a hobby farm for himself.
The one that was for sale there, right?
Yeah.
The fire
it's a
truck
young
is-
guy that bought it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's just a giant,
It's just a
giant
playground.
playground.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the intent also of this, as has been discussed, is that, we're trying to come up with something that would help the planning board, easier in making decisions in that regard. And I understand, like Bob was talking about the schools. When I moved here in 1977, I'm without a doubt, I think I'm correct. Canandaigua and Tom will probably be able to verify this, was the largest school system in Ontario County. Well, now Victor's probably got 800 or 900 more students in Canandaigua. And the houses up there are, much more expensive than they are here. To move close to the city and up in Pittsburgh and things like that. Because that's not going to guarantee you the students, but it has for them because they've expanded so much.
The farming, especially,
Yeah, right. And also Victor, there was a lot of open ground up in Victor when I moved here, and a lot of development went into that place since that period of time. It's still going on.
I think, my own history with this Ridgeline thing goes back to when I was on the planning board. At that point in time, we got what's called guidelines. In fact, that's
Still there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Troy said that, we have some protection, ridgeline development based on what's in code, but what's in code is just lifted in our design development guidelines.
Standards.
But what was lifted, it was just lifted out of the 2003 camp plan. And it's just fluff, in my opinion. That's all it is. There's no teeth. There's nothing in it, whereas this does have some more guidance. I'm all in favor of this, putting this forward. Now, using some of those statements or those checklists from California, what California views, I don't think we need that. I think you need something like this. You give the planning board a little bit more guidance, a little bit more ability to say, well, try to move that off the ridge line, move it down here, plant some trees around, whatever it says in here. I don't think that we should make that an exclusive $867,000 average, home sale, and then put the poor people up in the uptown area. I think that kind of segregation just rubs me the wrong way, Jack.
That's just basic economics, Terry. That's just, the exclusive properties are gonna be the people that can afford them. That's just
Well, yeah,
basic
so,
economics. So,
like Gary and I'll have to move out.
Well, that's not- Terry, that's not what I'm saying. And don't misconstrue what I'm saying. Well, then let me clarify it for you. Okay, let me clarify it for you then. What I'm saying is that you don't want high density in that area. Is that clear enough for you?
Don't let people living on ridge lines either.
We're saying the same thing.
So, okay, let's adapt this.
We're saying the same thing.
Let's adapt this.
I think this thing has a lot of holes on it and I'm ready to go through it. And I'm ready to go through it point by point. Now, I know that this is a campaign issue for you, Terry. You came out publicly and said it in a newspaper that you wanted to push this thing through. You did too, it was in the paper. That you were going to work hard on getting the ridge line issue addressed and passed.
Issue addressed, yeah.
That doesn't mean we should push it through based on that campaign promise. I think what we need to do is make sure that we put something on the books that is truly what we want it to be.
Well, okay.
And I've heard a lot of conversation here this morning that suggests that we're not all on the same page.
Well, I don't think we ever will be.
We got to at least try to reach some form of consensus or at least get closer.
Right there.
I think the one thing that you said, John, about high density. I think that is something that would play well with
Oh, yeah.
people. We're not pro high density. That's not what we're looking at.
Right.
And I think that that's something that we could agree to. And you're right, if we had this in there, even with some of the density we currently have, who knows? If we could, do the Back to the Future thing. But I think we can carve this out. I'm thinking the planning board needs a tool. They need something that they can use that will make their job easier and a more of a clear direction. And I think we can do that. We may not agree on everything, but my hope is that we can create that tool.
So that being said, don't we need to understand what can be built in that purple shaded area? And,
Yeah.
and as we sit here, I don't think anybody can answer that question.
But the other thing too, that what Doug said is this is part, this isn't in totality, everything. This is one part.
So show me the other part.
The conservation.
Well, you mentioned-
Show me the
so-
conservation
so
easement,
a
that-
big chunk
tell me
of
what can
you're
be built
talking
there.
About there in the purple areas in the residential lake district, the RLD, right? So the zoning for that is even more stringent than a lot of the others. So there's no way you would be able to do apartments, townhomes, multifamily type things in the RLD. It's just not permitted. You can't even build a restaurant in the RLD, even though we said, don't even get me
No
started on
commercial.
that. So don't even get me started on that. So anything right along the lake in the RLD, which is a big piece of that. Where's the zoning map?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do you have a picture of the RLD? Because I don't think the RLD is that large.
Okay, well.
I think it's
right
more
along the-
reminiscent.
No, just
It's
a-
more
just the
reflective of
shoreline.
that
No, it's just the shoreline.
pink one right there that shows the shoreline, right? That's,
We, I know we asked for an updated zoning map. Sean, you want to pull up a zoning map? But then, so then you've got other, like other zoning in here. You've got RR3 down here in this area. A lot of this is RR3.
SCR1.
Then you've got SCR1 up in this area, like here's Lakewood Meadows. You see a lot of Lakewood Meadows actually isn't even in the purple shaded area. It's all in the SCR1 here. Then you get all up in here to Fox Ridge. That's SCR1 and R130 maybe, I think. And then you get all up into here. This is all AR2, agricultural, residential 2 acre, and then AR1 over on this side. A lot of this over in here is AR1, and then there's even some industrial and stuff over in here. So it's a mixture of zoning. So you got to look at the base zoning, but then you've also got to look at whatever else we also have in terms of the zoning restrictions, and yes, the conservation subdivisions. So that's the one that I kept asking you guys to take a look at, is the conservation subdivision, because I felt like that was a get out of jail free card for the developers, because they could come in and propose almost anything. And not picking on the Morels, but Morels is a classic example of that. They came in and they said, okay, yes, this is in the SCR1 1 acre minimum lots, but we want to build townhomes. And we're going to come in with a conservation subdivision, even though it's not a 1 acre minimum lot, but they were able to do that. So now with the changes that we've done, that's going to be a lot more difficult for them to do that. But there's all kinds of different boxes that have to be checked in terms of the conservation subdivision analysis and the natural resource protection with that. And then the other thing is about this, just, as we're talking about zoning here, this visible from Canandaigua Lake. I mean, you've got some of this area over in here is actually part of our mixed use overlay, to be quite honest with you. So you've got competing, to your point, John, you've got competing interests in some of these things. And I don't know, especially over in here, I think this is gonna be a challenge for developers to meet both the view shed, if that was there, as well as the MUO. There's some competing parts there. Were you able to get,
Yeah, there it is.
can you just scroll down a little bit so we can look at that? That primarily, John, I think your interest is this section
You
here,
want to
right?
like the lake, the west side.
So, okay, so the red is the residential lake district. This is all RR3 down here, the gray area. The light green is AR2, the Tequil color there, that's the SCR1. And then you've got the gray and the browns here, which is like R130, R120. So it's a mixture. You'd have to almost look at it parcel by parcel,
Right.
which is what the developer is kind of doing. But the RLD is predominantly the shoreline that wraps all the way around. So that purple, let's just use that as an example. Let's grab one of those
So really, the RLD is not that large an area of that
It's,
purple.
it's
No.
not, it's just the shoreline.
Shoreline.
Yeah, it's the shoreline. So it looks like to me, the purple area comes up to about like here. That's where my hand is.
Right.
So not quite to this gray box here, but kind of like this. So it would cut through like this property, that property that we were just talking about, 4025 Middle Cheshire Road, it would cut through half of it. So, John, to your point, I think what your concern is this strip here, right? Between the RLD and the top of that purple area. Which would cut through this whole section. Actually, it would include pretty much all of the RSM parcel, just as an example. Yeah, it does,
Yeah.
almost all the way to the top of the RSM. So like, for instance.
That's still on
this-
hold anyways, isn't it?
What's, I'm
The
sorry.
RSM parcel, they're not doing anything with that now anyways, right?
No, they say they're going to.
Yeah, well, they've been saying that for the last.
Been saying it for 15 years. A recent conversation that said they're gonna-
You'll get your $500,000 lot sale.
I think it would be worth looking at it, putting on for just visual purposes, for us to put a little overlay, just to see the various, different zoning that would be affected. Honestly, we could do that.
Yeah, us
Make it
veterans,
transparent, kind of.
us veterans of the planning board, I think the issue we always had in dealing with anything that had to do with view sheds or ridge lines was where does it apply? I mean,
Right.
it was like, okay, it was very subjective. I mean, one person's idea of it being visual from the lake or from interior land, looking up at a ridge line.
Or the next door neighbor that bitches.
Oh, yeah, it could even be
Yeah.
an individual lot. So I think at least I'd like to see, and I think would be very helpful to the planning board, would be a more definitive area as to where any type of regulation, whether it be a guideline or an actual local law applies. And then along comes Canandaigua Shores, where we have an MUO and with its restrictions. But then obviously it's in the scenic view shed, and applying at least those principles to that project is sort of a challenge that I know Sean and I have been wrestling with the developer and trying to see if he at least is aware of what we're looking for, and providing him a copy of this draft was what we did, so that he would at least think about or be aware of the kind of thoughts that we're thinking about in terms of development along there, which would restrict, the density of the project along with the MUO regulations. And so that's sort of where we were standing was we've got guidelines currently. We're thinking about regulations potentially, but where do we apply it? And that's why I think having at least something hardline such as the viewshed map, that's a good start. And I think that's sort of where I'm coming from.
If I just could, the SCR1, because I know, John, to your point, a lot of what we're talking about is the SCR1. So the permitted principal uses are one single family dwelling per lot, one single family dwelling per lot with accessory apartment, agriculture uses, agriculture structures, keeping, breeding, raising of different agriculture related things. And that's it. So I know you're gonna say to me, well, how did they build townhomes at Lakewood Meadows? That was because of conservation subdivision.
And originally,
It was a
that was the preliminary approval was a much bigger, 2, those 4 and 5 was a much bigger circle driveway with single family homes. And the compromise was the townhomes and
More
if you-
open space.
more open space and given time. And there's 3 layers of plantings, if you look at those townhomes, that ultimately will grow up in semi-camouflage.
Years from now.
Yeah, well, that's life. But, that's suburbia, whether we like it
yeah.
or not. And if Jeremy Fields puts it wants to put in homes and a country club or a golf course, your neighbors are gonna parade in and make your guys' lives miserable. What are you doing to my view shed or my land,
My farm.
my farm? Yeah,
But see, that's where we blow up the concept of character of the neighborhood, isn't it? Because.
what's the character of the
well, that's
neighborhood?
what I'm
It's
saying.
suburbia.
That's what I'm
Suburbia
saying.
should have a country club.
Every neighborhood has a character. Every neighborhood has a character.
I'm
Doesn't
gonna buy
matter
Gary
whether it's
Gary
urban or
Weifels
suburban.
farm and turn it into a pig farm. And, you know, the right to farm. I mean, what do we see just recently? The folks that live next to the pig farm are bitching.
There's a way to limit development.
You betcha.
Big farm.
But again, if you don't like it, I challenge these people to buy the property or it's we're wasting a lot of time here, but we
You
gotta
know,
talk.
but part of it is we don't have a shared vision. You
I
can
just-
see that. We have.
You live in a suburban area and there's gonna be more homes there, whether they're townhomes.
You're not gonna stop it.
Single family.
You're not gonna stop it.
You have to
No.
get- you have to
All you can do is manage it. Let me ask you a
Can't
question,
have it
Doug,
white,
as a
we
follow-up.
can't have shiny
Yeah,
windows,
right.
John.
I built mine gray and you can't see it from the other side of the lake.
I don't know, there'll be somebody. that'll-
Somebody will find it, but let me ask a follow-up question, what you just said with the SCR1. If I found 100-acre property in the SCR1 and it's one lot now, one piece of property, there's nothing, or is there something in there, that's a better way to ask it. Is there something in there that stops me from breaking it up into half-acre lots or quarter-acre lots and building a high-density development there?
Conservation subdivision.
Yeah.
That's exactly what.
Yeah,
that's-
that would kick it into conservation subdivision.
And then now, and that's why, honestly, that's why I kept asking you guys to take a look at that, because like I said, it was kind of like wide open. Developer could come in, pros anything. I'm gonna put townhomes here and it's great for the community, right? Now, at least they have to go through the whole conservation subdivision analysis. They have to go through the natural resource aspect. They have to subtract out the constrained lands that they didn't previously have to do and all those types of things.
But is there anything in that conservation subdivision that determines lot size?
Yes, based on the natural resources. So each parcel, you have to do a calculation for every single parcel individually. That's the responsibility of the developer.
So if I had a 100-acre lot and 50 acres of it was going to be conservation land, what could I break the other 50 acres into? Quarter-acre lots? Half-acre lots, is it?
No, it would be based on, it was number of units, right, Shauna?
I
So it'd
think
be
your
50
base
units.
density,
It would be
It's
essentially
base
base
50,
density,
Yeah,
you
it's base
calculate your
density.
base density and then that
And
50
it's 1
acres.
acre lot minimum. So
1 acre
it's-
lot minimum.
Yeah,
That answers my question.
yeah. So it would be approximately 50 units in that
Right.
analysis. Yeah, so that's.
So the answer
that's
is 1 acre.
significantly different.
1 acre lots
Yes,
in the SCR1.
yes.
But those 50 units could be clustered.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
If you want, but it's no more than 50 units.
But
Right,
no
your
more than
underlying
50
zone
units.
is
In that
no-
The
example,
base density, I don't think you're fully understanding. The base density is computed by the
total acreage?
total acreage, yes.
So I could have 100 units in
No,
that.
you have to
No,
subtract
no.
out the constrained lands.
That's what I, all right, so that is how I understood it. So
Yeah.
then, all right, so if the constrained land was 50, then I'm
But you don't
limited
have
to
to have,
50. So the bottom line is 1 acre lots.
But that's a change. That's a change versus what it, I mean, the town board hasn't adopted that yet. I think the town board's gonna adopt that. in the next
Okay,
meeting.
let me ask another follow-up question. Aside from the RLD,
Mhm.
is that the most restrictive lot size?
The RLD.
Aside from the RLD, is the SCR1 the most restrictive lot size?
Well, it's. it
Until you get to the
varies.
uptown area?
No, it varies, because like R130, R120.
Yeah, R120s
those
are small.
Those are super small, those are, or even.
But we're not gonna, are we gonna have any of those
Well, you do have. some
lands up in here?
Yeah, you have some 20s.
20 in here.
Mhm.
But that conservation.
Applies to
land
all of
Set aside, that's just considered on land that's buildable, right? But you can put that into that package, the conservation. Let's say you got beach road or something like that.
Well, those will be
Or-
constrained lands, so those have to come out.
Then you have to take out 40% of what's left.
So, so that
That's
mixed use
MUO.
overlay has a 40% open space.
Terry, that's
requirement.
MUO.
That's different.
Right,
Yeah.
So the conservation subdivision doesn't have that.
It's not that.
Right. The
drawing
MUL
that she
has the
put together had 40% in it, so you know, that drawing that,
Yeah, she did have that.
Barbara, what's her name, put together from Labella. There was constrained land plus then 40%, she showed like 100-acre plot. There's 40% in that too.
I'd have to go back and look at it
There
again.
there is.
Okay.
So that, I mean, that chips away at that total.
Right. It definitely, the new conservation subdivision regulations, the draft ones, it would significantly alter development, I think it's fair to say, versus what is in place today.
Correct.
Because you're subtracting the constraints. I don't remember the 40%. I know the 40% is MUL, but if that's there also, then yes, then it would definitely even further reduce that.
Is a PUD allowed in any of the zoning districts?
Yeah, but what is 100 acres minimum, I think? So you have to have 100
But we've
acres.
broken that rule too.
I don't think for PUD we have one.
What's that acronym for?
Planned unit development,
Another workaround.
but that was 100, that was 100 acres. So the town board would have.
There's a lot of
to make that
those.
decision, and it would have to be specific, 100 acre minimum.
Would Jeremy have to look at the conservation subdivision
Sure.
regulations?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
but
more reason.
I think what he's proposing, he has, probably, honestly, I don't want to throw a number out, but significantly.
So he would
amount
be
of open
be
space
below
that's-
the base
Right.
density.
Yeah,
Right, I don't think there's many constraints there.
no, that piece of property already has water, sewer, gas on it, actually up on top of it. And truthfully, I've been up on it a couple of different times now. You can't even see it from Middle Cheshire Road. When you're on Middle Cheshire Road and you're looking at the woods and you look back up the driveway, those woods are actually part of the Whitefish PDR. The property's on the other side.
Okay, what do we want to do on this then? Are we going to, would you be agreeable, John, to move this forward? And the planning board has, another tool for them to use in that regard. And since it only applies to the areas showing up there. How about you, Tom? You voiced a little.
I would like to go through paragraph by paragraph and make some suggestions. And we don't have enough time to do it today, but I think there are a lot of editorial changes that we should be making before we pass this on.
I agree with that.
If in fact we pass it on. But
I have a couple of things, but maybe each take the draft and mark it up and circulate it. That might be an easier way than sitting here.
I think some things we got to talk about.
Yeah, I bled all over mine.
Yeah.
The visual impact assessment questionnaire, I thought that was, when we do get to it, I think that's loaded with controversy or different points of view.
Oh,
You know, one section is viewer sensitivity. I'm not sure that how that's going to play. I think it's a good try at getting at something, but I think that could be end up.
Or do we
being
need
very
it?
controversial.
Do we need it if we've got these regulations that the planning board or the zoning board can rely on?
That may be true, because it would be hard, it might be hard to defend.
It's very subjective.
Yes,
Oh,
Yeah, it's just an awareness.
you know,
That's all.
visual quality, character.
right.
Is, desired by the community. Who's the community?
And level of local concern, for instance, how do you figure, those are nice, statements, but
What's controversial?
Exactly.
Who decides?
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're creating a nightmare by having that thing. Pardon?
Access.
Well, again, that's something we've got to discuss, and we don't have time to do it, but I think we got, our next meeting, we go through page 1 through 8, and then decide whether we want to keep the visual questionnaire. I mean, we have to think of somebody that's hopefully going to come to Canandaigua and enhance the community. And they might walk away and say, screw you, I'm going to go to Farmington.
I'm gonna go to
This is-
South Bristol. I'm gonna go to,
Yeah, I mean, we're being too freaking elitist. This is a mixed community and we gotta have room for the $800,000 homes and the folks that want to pay the nice taxes.
and the starter homes.
And the starter homes and the apartments with hopefully affordable rents, whatever the hell that is.
It's gotta be a mixed development.
Yeah, and just an inclusive community, and that's a cheap shot too, but
A
a lot of
successful,
this is too elitist.
you said it, I think very well, Tom. A successful community has to have both. And I think one of the things that I've experienced firsthand is that it is very restrictive to build here in that purple area, and particularly in the RLD. And I think some of those restrictions need to be looked at through 2021 vision instead of past eyes, past visions. But I'm willing to go through each line item on this and review it and consider it. And then, as Tom said, when we're done, if we've got a good document that meets everyone's needs, then we move forward with it.
So what do you want the staff to do between now and then? And so that
I don't think it's do a damn thing. I think we just wrestle with this paragraph by paragraph.
Because I thought that was what this meeting was about. Because
We haven't got there yet.
Well, I think it's been a
I don't
productive,
think we want to rush through this.
I think it's been a productive meeting, except for some little interaction, but I think we've at least got everybody's opinions out there and ideas out there, and I think they're all good ones.
Well, I certainly don't want to see it rush through, but at the same time, I don't want to see it drag either, keep kicking the can down the road, because more and more development is going to be taking place, and they aren't going to have these on the books to help out, planning.
I'm available all day today or tomorrow or next day, whenever you want to meet.
I've got my
Kevin.
calendar. If it's, we want to set another meeting. I'm on board with that. I'd like to get this done, but I think all of this is necessary. And back to that thing, I really want to create a tool that the planning board can use to do what they're going to do. And John made the point too, at the end of the day, the marketplace is still the strongest factor. We can do this and we can do that, but what we have in this town is in demand.
Okay, you want our next meeting to be on the 23rd or 25th? You said that those dates are good for you on the planning, right, Chuck?
Hang on, 23rd.
That's a Monday, 3 weeks from today.
Yeah, that was good for me. Russ,
Fine. 9 o'clock.
23rd is good for you, John?
23rd is good for me, but I would like to see us meet earlier and push this thing along.
We have budget meetings that day with department stuff in here. Honestly, we kind of need this room, but we could always put you guys upstairs or something or other, and you
Yeah,
guys
we
can
could
meet
move
by
to another
yourself.
room.
Yeah.
I think we can squeeze it somewhere.
Well, you said you'd rather have it earlier, John?
I just assume if we truly want to get this thing moving and get it off the books, I'm ready to meet whenever earlier than that. Just,
I say
That's all.
the date, but we can meet earlier. I'd like to have closure on this month if we could.
What's that?
I'd like to have closure on this issue this month, whatever time it takes.
In town board meeting on the 16th, so.
how about next Monday,
how about next Monday? Yeah.
9th?
The 9th or 10th?
Either one
That'll
works.
work for me.
This room needed at that time, Doug? 9th or 10th? Which one would you rather prefer, Monday or Tuesday?
Monday works better
Okay.
for me. I could do the 10th.
Everybody set for the August 9th then?
Yep.
Okay,
And then leave the 23rd as an open date as a possibility too. Is that what we're saying?
So come prepared to discuss the draft, right?
right.
And hopefully in the end, we'll have a draft of a local law that we'll send on, right? I mean, we're not, I mean, the other option would be to firm up or hardline the guidelines and still have this as guidelines, but from what you're saying, Terry, it's something that should be more definitive in terms of regulations.
You said the ninth was good for this room and stuff. though?
Yeah, I think so. And there's a question on what.
Is it good for you too?
No, I have a 9 o'clock, but you guys tell me then. So,
And the other thing I'm sure that you received from, well, I shouldn't say it, but Kim sent out also for this meeting that the Agriculture Protection Overlay District, this is something the Ag Committee is going to be looking at. This Thursday night when they have their monthly meeting, they're concerned about it. So I'll be able to bring back some information, hopefully, on that, we'll let you know if we get through the present, view shed and ridgeline thing for next meeting. We can add that too somewhere down the line soon.
What else is on our hit list as far as things to look at? I'm sitting here thinking,
Code of ethics.
code of
That I
ethics.
put back, because we moved on the ridgeline on that, so we wanted to vote all the time.
In words of Wes, what's the issue on ethics?
I don't know, one of the board members drafted up, changes in it, things like that, so.
You guys been taking some payola or what?
It wasn't us that brought it up.
The free donuts or?
The Cayman Islands were mentioned. Something about the Cayman Islands.
It's free donuts at CIC.
I mean, if it ain't broke, we got enough to do. Isn't there statutes on that, for Christ's sakes? Why do we have to have a look?
Well, I don't know, when was the last time the code of ethics was ever, implemented townwide?
I mean, actually, I don't know that it's ever been. I mean, the way it's currently written, like, for instance, it says that the county board of ethics, the county actually does have a board of ethics, and it said it would sit as the towns. Clearly, when somebody wrote the law, they copy and pasted it. And that's actually not, you can't do that. The county can't do that. The county can't sit as our board of ethics. So there's some tweaking that probably could be done to clean it up, but to Tom's point, I don't think it's a priority. But on the other hand, I think one member of the board decided it was a good time to rewrite the whole thing, so.
And then you'd have a board to review that, and what's that lifetime appointment, because they never meet, the way the past practices.
Has anyone ever been referred to the Board of Ethics for the town? I mean, going back, I don't.
Tom Knapp and I got sued. RSM. Because
For my time.
we were members of the Canandaigua Lake Pure Waters, you pay them $5 a year to join or something.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's-
somebody claimed that we were biased,
Oh.
that we couldn't make decisions on RSM because we're members of the watchdog group there, the Pure Waters. That's the only ethics thing I can remember.
There's a policy in the town employee handbook. Technically, anybody that receives a paycheck from the town count that was considered an employee, including the board members and everything else. And so there's policies that regulate a lot of that stuff. So
Okay, then, I think we've finished for today, and, see everybody next Monday morning to come prepared so that we can move forward on this.
And maybe extend the time, I just want to get this done in August if we can.
I think we all do.
Okay.
I don't think they can afford it.
You have to be
Pay scale.
careful, you have to be careful.
No room for a sense of humor. No room for a sense of humor. Just,
But I do ask when we all are looking at this, you know, is this proposed code, is it objective? Is it reasonable? Is it fair to all the parties? Is it understandable and enforceable? I mean, that's the way all codes should be. And we have, there's a big job ahead on this thing, because you're gonna be saddled with it, and you guys are gonna be saddled with it. It's a pain in the
It's gotta be
ass.
better than what we have.
agreed.
Yeah, it can be, right, but we gotta whittle it down to something that's understandable and enforceable.
Even with disagreements, you know, or any contention, we can start with what we all agree upon. And we may never close on a few of the things we don't, but I think we can find consensus on some things,
Sure.
you know, for sure.
Okay, well, let's, everybody see each other on a week from today and have to be prepared. And hopefully we can
Thanks for the warning.
get this wrapped up. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
You here. Thanks, Kim.
We had donuts when we had the reception for Shauna, and
Yeah.
you know, my stomach's